Hello viewers, this is Ronald taking you through the tutorial for O-level mathematics. So in this video, I'm going to go through the solutions for O-level mathematics part 1 of Uneb 2019. So this video is suitable for students in senior 4. So we shall start with question 1, and question 1 says that solve the quadratic equation p squared minus 7p plus 12 equal to 0. So first of all, we shall rewrite the equation given, then after that we shall look for two factors whose sum is equal to negative 7 and product is equal to 1 times 12, which is 12. So those factors will be negative 3 and negative 4, because when I multiply negative 3 by negative 4, I'll come up with positive 12, which is here. And when I add negative 3 to negative 4, I'll come up with negative 7, which is here. So after getting the factors, I'll come and replace. So this negative 7, I'll replace it with negative 3 minus 4. So that gives me negative 3p minus 4p. So next is to group. So if you look at this pair, for these two, the common factor is p. So when I pull out p, this side I remain with p alone, which is this, and this side I remain with negative 3, which is that. For this case, the common factor is negative 4. So when I pull out negative 4 here, this side will be now positive p, and this side it will remain negative 3. So that's why there's minus here. So if you look at this and this are common. Therefore, what we shall do, we shall pull it out, and we come up with p minus 3 there, and the remaining part will be p and negative 4, which is that. Now because this is equal to 0, it implies that either p minus 4 is equal to 0 or p minus 3 is equal to 0. So for this being equal to 0, p will be equal to 4, and for this being equal to 0, p will be equal to 3. So that's what they wanted, and now let's see how marks can be awarded. So M1 for substituting the factors, and M1 for grouping, and M1 for product, and A1 for the values of P. So in Uneb, after marking Uneb, usually examiners make reports, and those reports are available on internet on the Uneb website. So in this video, I extracted out the report for Math Paper 1, and we shall be looking at the analysis for each question after the solution. So when we start with question 1, the report for question 1 question analysis is that this question required candidates to obtain roots of quadratic equation, and the question was popular. So these are the candidates' weaknesses. One is failure to substitute correctly using the formula. Remember, there are 3 methods of solving quadratic equations. One is by using bulldozer method. So those who use bulldozer method, some of them fail to substitute into the formula. Another method is by completing squares. So those who use this method, some of them fail to complete squares correctly. Now in the method we have seen in this video is the one for factorization. So some students fail to identify the factors using factorization method. So for identifying the factors of negative 3 and negative 4, some students could not identify them. So always you have to be keen on any of the formula you are well versed with. Then the advice for teachers is that learners should be taught to do more mental work. So if you're a student there, just know that you have to do a lot of mental work. Then teach students proper substitution using the formula. So even you, the student, this applies to you. You have to learn how to properly substitute into the formula if you're using the method for bulldozer. Then learners should practice more on how to complete squares. So if you opt to use the method for completing squares, you have to do a lot of practice on how to complete squares. So now we shall go to question 2. Question 2 says that the lengths of 8 trousers in centimeters are. These are the lengths. Find the model mark, and part B, the median mark. So remember, model length is the length which appears more. So in this case, you realize that when you look at this, 98 appears twice, but the rest appear once. Therefore, 98 is the model length. When you go to the median, you have to first arrange in ascending order. So when I arrange these values in ascending order, this is what I'll get. Then I'll keep cancelling on either side. So if I cancel 1, this I'll also cancel 1, cancel 1, cancel 1, cancel 1, cancel 1. So realize that I'm left with 2 values in the middles. Therefore, the median will be the average of these 2 values. Therefore, I come and say that median length is equal to the sum, which is 101 plus 103 over 2 to come up with 102. So basically that's what they wanted. Now let's see how much can be awarded. So B1 for getting the mode, B1 for rearranging, M1 for substituting, and A1 for the output. So this is the report for question 2. So the analysis that the question required the candidates to find the model length and median of ungrouped data. The question was very popular and well done in that year. So candidates' weakness: failure to arrange the data in ascending or descending order. Some students could not arrange the data, they could just start immediately to cancel one value on either side. But always remember that for ungrouped data, when you're getting mean, you have to first arrange in either ascending or descending order. The next, another weakness is that failure to distinguish between mode and median. Some students could not know what mode is and what median is. Failure to interpret the word model. So model, some students could be used to the word mode, but even the word model means mode. So always remember that. Then advice to teachers: teachers should put emphasis to measures of central tendency of ungrouped data. So those are the measures, those are the mean, median, and mode. Then question 3 says that given that tan theta is equal to -5/12 and theta is greater than or equal to 270 but less than 3 or equal to 360 degrees, determine the value of cos theta. So with this value, you realize that this angle lies in the 4th quadrant, because the angle is greater than this but less than this, so it is in the 4th quadrant. In the 4th quadrant, tan is negative, that is why you see a negative value here. But what you should remember is that in the 4th quadrant, cos is positive. So theta is in the 4th quadrant, therefore that's why this line is in the 4th quadrant, so the angle must be greater than 270. From tan theta is equal to opposite of adjacent, so this will be the opposite and this will be the adjacent. So now we shall use Pythagoras theory to get the hypotenuse. Therefore h will be equal to 5 squared plus 12 squared, everything under root, to come up with 13. So now that I've got h as 13, I can easily get cos, because cos is adjacent over hypotenuse. Therefore, I'll come here and say that cos theta is equal to 12 over 13, where 12 is the adjacent and 13 is the hypotenuse. So what you should realize is that now cos theta is positive. Why? Because theta is in the 4th quadrant. So basically that's what they wanted. Now let's see how much can be awarded. So M1 for using Pythagoras theory, A1 for getting the hypotenuse, M1 for you to know that cos is positive and it's in the cos is positive, and A1 for the ratio. So for you to identify adjacent and hypotenuse, then the ratio, that is A1. Okay, so let's look at the report for this question. So question analysis: candidates were required to use trigonometrical ratios of angles in different quadrants. Identify the quadrant where the given angle lies and find the cosine and use Pythagoras theory. So the question was not popular and was poorly done. So what were the weaknesses? Some candidates failed to identify the given angle, right quadrant, and apply Pythagoras theory correctly. So identifying that the given angle is in the fourth quadrant, it was not easy for students to identify, and also using Pythagoras theory correctly, it was also a challenge. So advice for teachers should ensure that students constantly practice on angles in all the four quadrants and use Pythagoras theory and trigonometrical ratios. Now we shall go to question 4. Question 4 says that factorize completely the following expressions. So A is a plus 1 everything squared minus 3 in brackets a plus 1. Then part B, 49 minus in brackets x minus 4 squared. So just start with part A. So part A, we are given that a plus 1 squared minus 3 a plus 1. So if you look at this, there's a common factor of a plus 1. So I'll first pull it out. When I pull out a plus 1, this side I'll remain with a plus 1, which is that, and this side I'll remain with negative 3, which is that. So next is open this box bracket. So a 1 minus 3 is negative 2, which is that, and this a is there. So in this case, at this step, I've already factorized completely because there's no other step I can proceed. So that's what they wanted in part A. Now let's go to part B. So part B, you have to realize that there's a difference of 2 squares, because 49 is equal to 7 squared, and this one also has a squared, and there's a minus. So after realizing that, you have to know that difference of 2 squares will be equal to sum and also product, sum and difference. So sum without these squares, it will be 7 plus x minus 4. Then difference will be 7 minus x minus 4. Then they are rated by a product. So with this, I'll now simplify. So 7 minus 4 gives me positive 3 for this side. So 7 minus 4 gives me positive 3, therefore it will be 3 plus x. But this side, this negative and this negative will give me a positive, so 7 plus 4 will give me positive 11, which is that. Then this negative and this x will give me negative x, which is that. So with that, I've already factorized completely, and basically that's what they wanted. So now let's see how much can be awarded. So M1 for this and factorizing out, and M1 for A1 for that. Then M1 for this step and A1 for that step. So this is the report for question 4. So question analysis. The question required knowledge of common factors and use of difference of 2 squares. And the question was very popular but poorly done. Why? So candidates' weakness is that candidates failed to identify common factors. Then others failed to apply difference of 2 squares. So in part A, candidates failed to identify common factors. Part B, candidates failed to apply difference of 2 squares in the bracketed numbers, and were instead writing equations. Advice for teachers. Teachers should help learners to differentiate between expressions and equations. Then another advice that teachers should guide learners to identify common factors. Another one is encourage constant practice on a variety of methods of factorization. So students must be well versed with factorization because it is very, very common. So now shall go to question 5. Question 5 says that the area of a square of area 36 centimeters squared is transformed to an image using a matrix that 3, 1, 2, 5. Determine the area of the image. So we know that determinant is equal to area of image over area of object. Therefore, the determinant of this matrix will be equal to area of image, which is now capital A, and area of object, which is 36, as it was given here. Therefore, the determinant will be product of entries in the major diagonal, which is 3 times 5 to give you 15, minus product of entries in the minor diagonal, which is 2 times 1 to give you 2. So next, the 15 minus 3 minus 2 gives 13, and when I cross multiply, this goes this side to come up with 13 times 36. Therefore, area will be 468 centimeters squared. So basically that's what they wanted, and now let's see how much can be awarded. So M1 for substitution at this point, and M1 for getting the determinant, then another M1 for cross multiplying, and A1 for the output. So the report on question 5, this is the report from question 5, and question analysis is that the question required candidates to apply the relationship between determinant of a matrix and area scale factor. So always remember that determinant of a matrix is equal to area of image over area of object. So the question was popular, and candidates' weakness is that candidates fail to relate area scale factor to determinant of a transformation matrix. So always remember that area scale factor is equal to determinant, and if the determinant is negative, you have to use the absolute value. In this case it was positive. So another one is that some candidates fail to get the determinant of a matrix. So you have to know the correct formula for getting determinant of the matrix, which is product of entries in the major diagonal minus product of entries in the product of entries in the major diagonal minus product of entries in the minor diagonal. Then advice to teachers is that teachers should review that topic on enlargement so as to relate area scale factor to determinant of transformation matrix. So now we shall go to question 6. Question 6 says Matovu is twice as old as Nancha. After 4 years, the sum of their ages will be 26 years. Find Nancha's age. So you shall have to first draw a small table for you to easily get the equations to use. So present age is that Nancha will be x and Matovu will be 2x, because here they say that Matovu is twice as old as Nancha. So if Nancha is x, Matovu will be twice, which will be 2x. But the side after 4 years, the sum of their ages will be 26 years. So after 4 years, it means that Nancha will be x plus 4 and Matovu will be 2x plus 4. But the side the sum of their ages will be 26 years. What does that mean? It means that when I add this to this, I'll be able to get 26 years. Therefore, I'll come and say x plus 4 plus 2x plus 4 is equal to 26. Therefore, when I calculate terms, x plus 2 gives me 3x, 4 plus 4 gives 8, and this is 26. Then when I take this on this side, 26 minus 8 gives me 18. When I divide both sides by 3, I'll come up with x equal to 6. But they told us find Nancha's age, and Nancha's age is x. Therefore, we shall come and conclude that the present age of Nancha is 6 years. So basically that's what they wanted, and now let's see how much can be awarded. So B1 for algebraic expressions, then M1 for equating, and M1 for dividing by 3, and A1 for the required age. So this is the report for question 6, question analysis, that candidates were required to form algebraic expressions and equations and solve equations. So the question was popular though poorly done. So weakness is that candidates failed to form correct equation from the expression. Summing up and equating it to 26, it was not easy for candidates. Then candidates could not interpret after 4 years. So this word after 4 years, some candidates failed to interpret it, so it should be keen. Hope you have understood it. So advice to teachers is that teachers should put more emphasis on forming expressions and equations from word problem. Then encourage learners to integrate English language in mathematics, because that was involving English and you form expressions and equations. Okay, so now we shall go to question 7. Question 7 says the figure below shows a circle with center O and angle BCD is 35. So this is angle BCD 35. Calculate part A angle CDB and part B angle ADB. So this is angle CDB is this and angle ADB is that. So first of all, you shall know that angle CDB, which is this plus this are angles of a triangle, so they add up to 180. Therefore, when I simplify, 35 plus 90 gives me 125, and when I take 125 this side, it will become 180 minus 125 to come up with angle CDB being equal to 55 degrees. Then for part B, angle ADB, I'll know that these are angles on a straight line, therefore angle ADB is equal to, I can either use the angles on a straight line or use exterior angle property, whereby one exterior angle is equal to two opposite interior angles. Therefore, if I use that property, I realize that this angle ADB is equal to 35 plus 90, which is here. Therefore, the required angle will be 125 degrees. So that's what they wanted. Now let's see how much can be awarded. So M1 for this, adding and equating to 180, A1 for that, M1 for this, and A1 is for that. So basically that's what they wanted. So the report for this question is a question analysis that the question required candidates to use the angle properties of a circle, specifically angles in a semicircle, and the question was not popular and was poorly done. Candidates' weakness: candidates lacked knowledge about the angle subtended by the diameter on the circle as 90 degrees. Then 2, failure to identify angles on a straight line. So angles on a straight line add up to 180. Some students fail to identify that. So there are two ways of getting this angle ADB. You can use angles on a straight line whereby this plus this is equal to 180. For example, if I say, therefore, if this is x, it means that x will be equal to 180 minus this, which is 180 minus 55, so you'll come up with 125, or use exterior angle property. Then another thing, angle subtended at the circumference by the diameter is always 90, so that's why this is a right angled triangle. Okay. So failure to identify angles on a straight line. Then advise teachers should emphasize the derivation of circle properties from construction. So students must be well versed with circle properties. Then question 8 says solve the simultaneous equations. These are the simultaneous equations they want us to solve. So first of all, I have to first balance the one of the coefficients. So if I choose to balance the coefficients of y, I'll come and put this value here and this value there. Now what does that mean? It means that these 3 will multiply throughout this equation and these 2 will multiply throughout this equation. And when I do that, this is what I'm going to get. So 3 by 2 gives me 6, which is that 6y. So 3 by this gives me negative 9x, and 3 by this gives me 39. Then 2 by this gives 6y, 2 by this gives 2x, and 2 by this gives 6. Now next is to subtract. When I subtract, 6y minus 6y is 0. Negative 9x minus 2x will give me negative 11x. 39 minus 6 will give me 33. So next is to divide both sides by 11 to come up with x equal to negative 3. So now that I've got x, I can substitute x in either this equation or this equation and make y the subject. So if I substitute in the second equation here, I'll come and substitute x, which is negative 3, therefore 3y minus 3 is equal to 3, therefore 3y is equal to 6, because this one has gone this side to become plus. Then when I divide by 3 on both sides, y will be equal to 2. So basically that's what they wanted, and now let's see how marks can be awarded. So M1 for subtraction and A1 for the value of x, M1 for substitution and A1 for the value of y. So let's look at this report for question 8. So question 8, this question required candidates to use any method to solve simultaneous equations with two unknowns. So here I could use any method like elimination, substitution, and graphical and matrix, but you have to be keen to use the method which takes less time. For example, if I choose to use graphical method, it may take longer time. So, and remember here we are racing against time, so it is not advisable to use graphical. Matrix, if you are well versed, you can use it because it is also simpler. In this method, in this video, I've used what we call elimination method. That's why I had to first balance the coefficients of y. Then after that, substitution. So substitution method can also be used. So there are 4 methods, but you choose the one which is easier and can be done quickly. So the question was very popular because students are more versed with simultaneous equations. Then weakness to candidates. So one is failure to equate the coefficients of a variable. Failure to equate the coefficients, so to balance, I think you saw what I first did, the one for cross multiplying the coefficients of y. So failure to do that, it was also a weakness. 2 is failure to rearrange the equations in matrix form. So there are some students who use the matrix method but they fail to rearrange the equations to matrix form. Then another one is failure to eliminate one unknown using elimination or substitution method. So failure to cross multiply like I did to balance the y coefficients, some students could not do that. Then very few candidates attempted the question using graphical method. Like I said, graphical method is not advisable to use if the question comes in section A unless they specify, because it takes a little longer time than the rest of the methods. Yet it has 4 marks. Then advice to teachers: emphasize the use of different methods in solving simultaneous equations so that the students can choose the one which is easier for them. Now we shall go to question 9. Question 9 says the table below shows the ages in years of 40 teachers in a school. So these are the ages which I've grouped in classes, and these are the number of teachers per age group. So they want us to draw a cumulative frequency curve or OG for the data. So before we draw the cumulative frequency curve, we have to first complete a tabulate our results. So the class, now for the class, it is the same as these very values for the ages. So that's what we are going to write under class. The next will be frequency. Now frequency is the same. These very values for the number of teachers is what we shall write under frequency. So you shall come and write that. So next is the crucial step we have been waiting for, and that is the one for CF, which is cumulative frequency. So how is cumulative frequency generated? So first of all, you begin by writing this value here, so that is 2. Next we will say 2 plus 4 to come up with 6, which is there. Then 6 plus 8 to come up with 14, which is there. Then 14 plus 10 to come up with 24. 24 plus 7 to come up with 31. 31 plus 5 to come up with 36, 36 plus 3 to come up with 39, 39 plus 1 to come up with 40. So that's how the CF column is generated. Next is class boundaries. Now for class boundaries, you look at these values. So there is 35 and 34, so the difference is 1. 35 minus 34 is 1, therefore 1 divided by 2 is 0.5. What does that mean? It means that to get the lower class boundaries, you subtract 0.5 from this lower class limit, and to get the upper class boundaries, you'll add 0.5 to this upper class limit. So when we do that, this is what we are going to get. So for this one, 30 minus 0.5 is 29. 34 plus 0.5 is 34.5. Then for the next one, this minus 0.5 is that, this plus 0.5 is that. Next, this minus 0.5 is that, this plus 0.5 is that. Next is this minus 0.5 is that, this plus 0.5 is that. Then this minus 0.5 is that, and this plus 0.5 is that. So this minus 0.5 is that, and this plus 0.5 is that. And lastly, sorry, in second last, this minus 0.5 is that, and this plus 0.5 is that. So lastly, this minus 0.5 gives that, and this plus 0.5 gives that. So that is how the column for class boundaries can be generated. So in this table, what we are interested in is the column for cumulative frequency and class boundaries. So this value, getting this value is correct, that is 1 mark. So next is to plot our ogive. So before, you need a graph paper, and after the graph paper, you have to draw axes, both horizontal and vertical. Then next you have to label to feed in the values for horizontal axis and vertical axis. So let's start with the horizontal axis. For horizontal, we feed in values of class boundaries, or we can say upper class boundaries, because we are plotting our cumulative frequency against upper class boundaries. Now that you are done with feeding in the values for the horizontal axis, let's feed in values for the vertical axis. And those are the values for cumulative frequency. The scale must be uniform. Okay, so now that you are done, next is to plot. Now to plot, you have to plot upper class boundaries with corresponding cumulative frequency. So for 34.5 we shall plot 2, this we shall plot 6, this we shall plot 14, this we shall plot 24, this will be correspond to 31, this will correspond to 36, this will correspond to 39, and this will correspond to 40. So let's do that. So this one corresponds to that, 2, and this one is there, 6, and this one is there, then this one is there, 54.5 is there, 59.5 is there, 64.5 is there, and 69.5 is there. So next is to draw a smooth curve through all these points. So the curve must pass through all those points, but it has to be as smooth as possible. So let's draw a smooth curve. Okay, so that is what we call an ogive, or a cumulative frequency curve. So let's see how much can be awarded. So B1 for the correct axis with the correct scale, then the scale must be uniform. Then B1 for plotting all these points, and B1 for drawing a reasonable smooth curve. Now that word reasonable smooth curve, it must be smooth and passing through all the points. So basically that's what they wanted, and now let's first look at the report. So this is the report for this question. Question analysis is that the question required finding the cumulative frequency and class boundaries and using them to draw an ogive. That is why you had to first tabulate the values and in order to generate the values of cumulative frequency and class boundaries. It also required labeling axes correctly. Some students forget to label. The question was very popular. So weakness for candidates is that one is failure to get the cumulative frequency. So some students failed to get the cumulative frequency correctly. And then next, failure to use class boundaries. Some students were plotting lower class boundaries. We are plotting cumulative frequency against lower class boundaries, so that makes it not okay. Others were using midpoints. Then next is plotting frequency against class boundaries. Some students, instead of plotting cumulative frequency against upper class boundaries, they were plotting frequency against class boundaries. Yet that is, so frequency against class boundaries is for histogram, not ogive. Then next is failure to label axes correctly. Some students could not label that the vertical is cumulative frequency and the horizontal is upper class boundary. So some students were labeling that vertical is y-axis and horizontal is x-axis, which is not okay. The next is failure to plot points correctly and draw a smooth curve. So plotting the points correctly, you must be well versed with plotting, and that for you to plot correctly, the scale must be easy to use and uniform. Then the curve must be as smooth as possible. You must make sure that the curve is as smooth as possible. Advice to teachers: teachers need to put more emphasis on obtaining cumulative frequency, use of class boundaries, and drawing smooth curves. So this is a very important issue. Most students fail to draw smooth curves, but the curve must be as smooth as possible. Always remember that. Now we shall go to question 10. Question 10 says that given that this matrix multiplied by this column matrix is equal to this column matrix, find the values of x and y. So first we shall rewrite the given matrix, then we multiply. So this with this gives me, so x by 2 gives me 2x, then plus 3 by 5 to give me 15. Then second row with this column, 4 by 2 gives me 8, and y by 5 gives me 5y. So next we have to equate the two. So when I equate this with this, I'll come up with this, and when I make 2x the subject, this will go this side to come up with negative 16. Divide by 2 on both sides, I'll come up with x equal to negative 8. Then also I'll equate this with this to come up with 8 plus 5y equal to 18. Then take this one this side to come up with 5y equal to 10. Divide by 5 on both sides to come up with y equal to 2. So now those are the values of x and y which they wanted, and now let's see how much can be awarded. So M1 for matrix multiplication, M1 for equality. So it is mobile, meaning can be given at this step or at this step. Then A1 for value of x and A1 for value of y. So the report for question 10, the question required matrix multiplication and solving simple linear equations. So the question was very popular and well done. So but some of the weaknesses is that candidates fail to multiply matrices to form linear equations. So you have to know that when you're multiplying, we multiply row by column. Failure to solve equations. So failure to solve equations. Some students fail to solve the equations correctly. So the advice to teachers is that teachers should emphasize the use of matrices to solve equations. Okay, so that has been section A. Now we shall go to section B. So section B has 7 questions and the student is expected to answer 5, but because this is the revision part, we shall answer all the 7. So let's start with question 11. Question 11 says Mukisa stays 6 kilometers away from the factory where he works. One day he started his journey at 6:42 a.m. and arrived at 7:30 a.m. He walked part of the journey at 5 kilometers per hour. Realizing he would be late, he ran the rest of the journey at 10 kilometers per hour. What distance did he have to run? And part B, the factory closes its gates to its workers at 7:45 a.m. Determine the number of minutes by which Mukisa would have been late had he not run part of the journey. So first of all is to make a sketch of the information given. So first of all, we shall say that let x be the distance covered while running. So it will be the journey will be split into two parts. One he was walking and another one he was running. So this was walking and this was running, but the total distance is 6 kilometers. So if x is the distance covered while running, we shall come and put x kilometers here at a speed of 10 kilometers per hour, and this side will be 6 minus x kilometers at a speed of 5 kilometers per hour. So with that, we can now go and answer the question. So question 1 said, what distance did he have to run? So in this question, you realize that he started at this time 6:42 and arrived at 7:30. Therefore, the total time taken will be got by getting the minutes from this to this. So let's first do that. So you'll say that 7:30 hours in minus 0642 hours will give me 48 hours, meaning that the total time taken both while walking and while running will be 48 minutes. Therefore, when I convert these minutes to hours, I'll divide by 6 to come up with 0.8 hours. Therefore, the time taken while walking will be equal to the distance over speed. So distance is 6 minus x, and speed was 5 kilometers per hour, which is in hours or so. That is, let it be t1. Then time taken while running, it will be x over 10, where x is the distance covered while running and 10 is the speed used while running, and let it be t2. So but we know that the total time, this t is equal to this time plus this time. Therefore t is equal to t1 plus t2. Next is to substitute. So when I substitute, t is 0.8, t1 is that, and t2 is that. So I've got an equation with x as an unknown. Next is to simplify and make x the subject. So the first thing to do is multiply by the LCD, lowest common divisor, and that is 10. So this by 10 will give me that, this by 10 gives me that, and this by 10 gives me that. When I simplify, this by 10 gives me 8, and this one, this and this will remain with 2, and this with this will cancel and remain with only x. So next I'll open brackets to come up with that, then collect like terms to come up with that. Therefore x is equal to 4 kilometers. Therefore the distance covered while running is 4 kilometers. So that's what they wanted for that part. So let's see how much can be awarded before we go to the next slide. So M1 for subtraction to get the time, and another B1 for you to get the time, the value of t, and B1 for you to get the value of t1, B1 for you to get the expression of t2, M1 for substituting into the times, M1 for multiplying through by the LCD, and A1 for the value of x. So that was the distance, what the distance he had to run. We have got it. Now the part B, they said the factory closes its gates to its workers at 7:45. Determine the number of minutes, this is of minutes, by which Mukisa would have been late had he not run part of the journey. So if he had not run part of the journey, it implies that the whole 6 kilometers he spent while walking. So they will know that the distance will be 6 and the speed will be 5 kilometers per hour. Therefore, because we know distance and speed, we can get time. So let's first do that. So first of all, the required time not to be late will be that 1 hour and 3 minutes. Therefore, if Mukisa only works, the total time taken will be total distance over speed. Therefore, total distance is 6 and speed is 5. Therefore, it will be 1.2 hours. So then I convert it to be 1 hour and 12 minutes. But the time required not to be late is 1 hour and 3 minutes, so we have to subtract. Therefore, extra number of minutes will be 12 minus 3 to come up with 9 minutes. This is because 1 hour minus 1 hour is 0, so 12 minus 3, that's where this 12 minus 3 is coming from. So that's what they wanted. Now let's see how much can be awarded. So B1 for the required time not to be late, and M1 for division to get total time, and A1 for total time, M1 for subtraction, and A1, so this would have been A1, so A1 for the extra number of minutes. So that was question 11. Now let's look at the report for question 11. So the question required formation of algebraic expressions and equations, solving linear equations, expressing minutes into hours, and subtracting time to get time intervals. This question was not popular and poorly done, so students were not well versed with such questions. The weakness is that candidates could not add and subtract time correctly. So remember, when you're adding or subtracting time, you have to first convert to 24-hour clock. Then after if you don't do that, then the addition or subtraction will be not okay. Then 2 is that candidates fail to convert minutes to hours. So you have to know that from minutes to hours, you have to divide by 60. Then 3 is that candidates fail to get correct expressions for both distance and time. So for you to get the correct expressions for distance and time, you have to make a sketch. I think you remember the first sketch you made, having 2 parts, one for walking, another one for running. So making a sketch before answering the question is very, very vital to make correct expressions. So advice to teachers is that teachers should emphasize use of expressions in time, distance, and speed, and students should have more practice in subtracting time, because it over the sub students. So you have to know how you have to be well versed with converting from 12-hour clock to 24-hour clock, and from 24-hour clock to 12-hour clock. So now we shall go to question 12. Question 12 says, part A, given the matrices B, which is 2, 8, 16, negative 4, and matrix C, which is 6, negative 4, negative 12, 8, find the inverse of matrix B plus C. That was part A. Then part B, Mayo sells shirts of all sizes, small, medium, and extra large. The table below shows his sales for 3 days. So these are the sales for 3 days. That is Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. He sells each shirt at shillings 40,000 for small, and shillings 50,000 for medium, and shillings 60,000 for extra large. Roman 1. Write down a 3x3 matrix for the sales, a 1x3 matrix for the prices of the shirts. And Roman 2. Use the matrices to calculate his total income from the shirts. So we have to first add matrix B plus C. So this is B and this is C. So when you add the 2, you realize that 2 plus 6 is 8, 8 plus negative 4 is 4, 16 plus negative 12 is 4, negative 4 plus 8 is positive 8. Next we shall get the determinant. So determinant is equal to product of entries in the major diagonal minus those in the minor diagonal. So 8 by 4 minus 4 by 4 to come up with 32 minus 16, which is 16. So now that I've got the determinant, I can get the inverse by saying inverse is equal to 1 over determinant multiplied by the adjoint. So adjoint is got by changing entries in the major diagonal, so this 4 will come this side and L2 will come this side. But for the minor diagonal, we change the sign, so this is positive 4, it becomes negative 4. This is positive 4, it becomes negative 4. So when I multiply 1 over 16 by every entry inside the matrix, I'll come up with 0.25, negative 0.25, negative 0.25, 0.5 as the inverse. Then for part B, Roman 1, they wanted the matrix for cells. They wanted a 3 by 3 matrix for cells, and that will be, and also a 1 by 3 matrix for the price of the shirts. So a 1 by 3, it will be 1 by 3, it means that 1 row and 3 columns, and therefore a 3 by 3 will be 3 rows and 3 columns. So this 273, 245 and 113 is coming from here. So this is 273, 245 and 113. Then next was the matrix for the prices. So for the prices, it will be, remember they said 1 by 3, so 1 row and 3 columns. So this is for price for small, price for medium, and price for extra large. So that was Roman 1. Now Roman 2, they wanted you to use matrices to calculate its total income from the shirts. So before we go to Roman 2, let's first see marks for this slide. So M1 for addition, B1 for output, B1 for determinant, M1 for substitution, and A1 for the output. B1 for the sales matrix, B1 for price matrix. So now we shall go to Roman 2, where we have to use matrix multiplication. So with matrix multiplication, you shall multiply this by this. Remember, the number of columns for the first matrix must be equal to the number of rows for the second matrix. Now, because this may be hectic and tedious, we shall split it into 3. So we are going to first consider this alone, which is that. So income got on Monday, it will be this row by column. Therefore, when I multiply row by column, I'll say 40,000 times 2 to give me 80,000, 50,000 times 7 to give me 350,000, 60,000 times 3 to give me 180,000. So when I add everything, I'll come up with 610,000 shillings. So that will be the income got on Monday. What about income got on Tuesday? So the income got on Tuesday will be 40,000 times this 2 to come up with 80,000, 50,000 times 4 to come up with 200,000, 60,000 times 5 to come up with 300,000. So when I add, I'll come up with 580,000 shillings. Then income got on Wednesday, it will be this by this to come up with 40,000, then this by this to come up with 50,000, and this by this to come up with 180,000 shillings. So the total will be 200 shillings, 270,000. Therefore, the overall total income will be got by summing up all the 3. So sum up this plus this plus this to come up with this. So when I add all the 3, I'll come up with 1.46 million shillings. So basically that's what they wanted, and now let's see how much can be awarded. So B1 for this, B1 for this, B1 for this, M1 for addition, A1 for output. So the matrix must be seen. So now we shall go to the report. So the question required addition of matrices, finding determinant and inverse of a matrix, order of matrices, matrix multiplication, and formation of matrices from word problems. So all these were tested in this question, and the question was very popular. But some of the weaknesses is with the candidates is one is failure to add matrices. Then also some students fail to add the matrices correctly. Then two is failure to obtain the inverse. Some students fail to get the adjoint, which had to be later used to get the inverse. Another one is failure to identify the correct order and compatibility of matrices. So remember, for you to multiply matrices, the number of columns in the first matrix must be equal to the number of rows in the second matrix. So if you interchange the two, everything will be not okay. So some students could not identify the compatibility. Then also there was also failure to interpret the language used. So interpreting the language used in two matrix form, it was also a problem to some. So they advise that teachers should put more emphasis on addition and inverse of matrices because they are common. Then two, emphasize compatibility of matrices before multiplication. So students have to first check the order of matrices, which one follows what, because if they are not compatible, the multiplication cannot come out. So now we shall go to question 13. Question 13 says that on a farm there are 4 houses, P, Q, R, and S. P is 800 meters on a bearing of 020 degrees from Q. R is 500 meters on a bearing of 160 degrees from Q. S is 1200 meters on a bearing of 045 degrees from R. Part A. Use a scale of 1 centimeter to represent 100 meters to construct a scale drawing showing the positions of the 4 houses. Then part B. Find the distance and bearing of S from P. So such a question requires you to first make a sketch. So let's first make a sketch. So we are told that P is on a bearing of 020 degrees from Q, so that is the bearing. Remember, bearing is measured from the north. So this is the 20 degrees at Q, then you stand at Q, you measure off 800 meters and you reach P. Then they also talked about R, that's on a bearing of 160 degrees from Q. So this is the 160. So bearings are measured from the north. So that is 160 degrees, and this is the distance of 500. When you measure 500 meters, you reach R. Then next is point S, which is on a bearing of 45 degrees from R. So this is 45 degrees from the north, and the distance is 1200 meters. So basically that is the sketch. Now for the accurate diagram, we have to first use the scale given, so we have to convert these meters into centimeters using the scale given. So that means that QP, which is 800 meters, it is equivalent to 8 centimeters, because of the scale was saying that 1 centimeter represents 100 meters. What about QR? QR is equal to 500 over 100 to come up with 5 centimeters. Then RS will be 1200 over 100 to come up with 12 centimeters. So let's see how much can be awarded for this slide before we go to the next slide, where we shall draw the accurate diagram. So B2 for the correct sketch and B1 for correct conversion. So all these conversions have to be correct. So next what we are going to do, we shall draw this accurately using now these ones. Where there is 800 meters, we shall measure off 8 centimeters. Where there is 500 meters, we shall measure off 5 centimeters. And where there is 1200 meters, we shall measure off 12 centimeters. So what you need a graph paper. So that will be the graph paper. Then next we are going to start. We shall start from Q and draw our compass direction, then measure off. Use the protractor now. Here we use protractor, so you use protractor, measure off 20 degrees from north, and where you reach, draw a line and measure off 8 centimeters. Where it stops, that is where P will be. Then for R, you have to measure 160 degrees starting from the north direction using a protractor, and this is 160 degrees. Then after that you measure off 5 centimeters, and where you stop, that will be your R. Then from R, I measure 45 degrees from the north using a protractor, then also measure off 12 centimeters using a ruler, and where you stop, that will be your S. So they wanted us to measure the shortest distance and the bearing. So this, you draw a dotted line. This is dotted because it's not part of the question, but it helps you to measure the distance and also to get the bearing which was asked. So we'll come and conclude that for B Roman 1, length PS is 8.4 centimeters. So usually give an allowance of 0.1 centimeters because of some errors. But because they wanted distance, you have to again convert the centimeters to meters. Therefore, it will be 8. So from centimeters to meters, we shall multiply by 100. That's why here it was 8.4. Then we multiply by 100, it becomes 840. Then this one 0.1 multiplied by 100 to come up with 10. Then for the bearing of S from P, it will now, you have to measure off using a protractor. You measure off this angle, and that will be 117 degrees. So usually give an allowance of 1 degree plus or minus. So basically that's what they wanted, and now let's see how much can be awarded. So B1 for the angle of 20 degrees at Q, B1 for measuring of 8 centimeters, B1 for the angle of 160 at Q, B1 for measuring of 5 centimeters, B1 for measuring the angle of 45 degrees at R, B1 for measuring of the 12 centimeters, B1 for you to get the length, to set the length, and A1 for the distance. Remember, distance they want in meters. And another A1 for the bearing. So now we shall look at the report for this question. So the question required bearings, measurement of angles using protractors, and length using rulers, and sketch drawing. So sketch is a must, then drawing of parallel lines and conversion. So this is the reason why we use graph papers, because graph paper has already parallel, horizontal and vertical lines. Then also conversion using the scale given. So that's what was required in this question, and the question was very popular and well done. So some of the weaknesses of some students or candidates is that 1, failure to draw correct sketch. So the sketch has to be first drawn and it has to be correct. Then B, another weakness, failure to convert different distances. So the conversion from meters to centimeters, it is also vital. You have to divide instead of multiplying. The another one is failure to measure the angles from north direction and clockwise. So some students were measuring angles starting from the horizontal going anti-clockwise. But for bearing, so this is not for bearing. For bearing, we have to start from the north and going in a clockwise direction. For other angles, like quadrants, we start from the horizontal and go anti-clockwise. But for bearing, you have to remember that it has to be clockwise and starting from the north. Another one is failure to use the given scale. So you have to use the scale that is given. You don't forge your own. Then advise that teachers should emphasize correct sketch drawing, parallel north lines, and correct use of protractor and to measure the angles. So here we don't use compass to construct the angles, we use protractors. And here to emphasize these parallel north lines, you have to use graph paper. Then another one is that teachers should emphasize conversion of distances. So distances have to be converted because they are too big to be measured. The another one is that emphasize that angles in bearings are measured clockwise and from the north line. So angles in this is what I've already talked about. Other angles are measured in, for example, angles in quadrants are measured starting from the horizontal going anti-clockwise, but in bearing angles are measured starting from the north line and going in the clockwise direction. So always never forget that. So now we shall go to question 14. Question 14 part A says a bag contains red balls and white balls. The probability of picking a white ball is 1/8. If there are 24 balls in the bag, find the number of red balls. Then part B, a basket contains 30 bananas. 10 of them are ripe and the rest are unripe. 2 bananas are selected at random from the basket with replacement. Not this word, with replacement. Find the probability that both are ripe, and Roman 2, one is ripe and one is unripe. So yeah, start with part A and say that let X be the number of white balls in the bag. Therefore, probability of picking a white ball will be X over the total number, which is 24, but the probability was given as 1/8. Therefore, next we shall now cross multiply to come up with this will give us 8x, with this will give us 24. Then when I divide both sides by 8, I'll come up with x being equal to 3. Therefore, the number of white balls in the bag are 3. And because these are 3 and the total was 24, it implies that the number of red balls will be 24 minus 3 to come up with 21 balls. Now we shall go to Roman 2. Roman 2, first of all, we know that probability of a ripe is 10/30 because the total number was 30 but 10 are ripe. Then the ones which are unripe will be the remainder, so 30 minus 10 will give you 20, which will be that over the total, which is 30. Therefore, the probability for ripe is 10/30, and probability for unripe is 20/30. But they told us Roman 1 that to find the probability that both are ripe. That means that the first one is ripe and also the second one is ripe. Now, because it was with replacement, it implies that probabilities do not change. So this one ripe is that, and also the second one to be ripe is also that. So with replacement, probabilities do not change. So when I multiply 10 by 10 will give me 100, 30 by 30 will give me 900. So I can simplify these 2 zeros cancel and these 2 zeros cancel, so remain with 1/9, which is that. So basically that's what they wanted in Roman 1. Now before you go to Roman 2, let's see how marks can be awarded for this slide. So M1 for equating the probabilities, B1 for the value of x, M1 for subtraction, and A1 for the number of red balls. Then B1 for the probability of ripe and another B1 for probability of unripe. Then M1 for multiplying the two probabilities, come up with the probability of both ripe, and A1 for the output. So this A1 can be given at this step or at this step. So if you stop at this step where it is 100/900, still you'll be able to get this A1. So for probabilities, you may either you may either express in its simplest form, or you leave it as you have got it. So now we shall go to Roman 2. So probability that one is ripe and one is unripe is the same as probability that first one is ripe and another one is not ripe. So that's why there is a complement here. And or it means that first can be ripe and the second one is not ripe, or when in the picking, first will not be ripe and the second will be ripe. So remember, with replacement, probabilities do not change. Therefore, this one for ripe will be 10 over 30. For unripe, it will be 20 over 30. Similarly, also in this case, the one for unripe will be 20 over 30, and for ripe will be 10 over 30. So with replacement, probabilities do not change. So when I multiply 10 by 20, I'll come up with 200. 30 by 30, I'll come up with 900. 10 by 20, I'll come up with 200. 30 by 30, I'll come up with 900. When I simplify, I'll come up with that. So these zeros can cancel to remain with 4 over 9. So basically that's what they wanted in Roman 2. Now let's see how much can be awarded. So M1 for this probability, M1 for this probability, another M1 for addition, then A1 for the final answer. So now let's look at the report for question 14. So this question required candidate to have knowledge of probability, random picking of items from a bag, and picking 2 items without replacement. With it, this should be with, so picking 2 items with replacement. It also required the candidate to know that total probability is always 1. Knowledge of independent events, drawing probability, tree diagrams, and sampling with replacement is also required. So the question was popular, and the candidate's weakness is that candidates fail to differentiate between sampling with and sampling without replacement. So always remember that with replacement, probabilities do not change, but without replacement, probabilities keep on changing as you draw a ball. Then 2 is that some candidates fail to interpret the question correctly. So you have to, before you start answering the question, you have to first read it and master and interpret it correctly so that you can answer in the correct format. So advice to teachers that 2 types of sampling should be clearly taught. So students must be taught so that the 2 types of sampling are clearly understood. They should know what happens with replacement and also what happens without replacement. So now we shall go to question 15, and question 15 says the height y meters of a wave on a certain day is given by y equal to 5 plus cos 30x degrees, where x is the number of hours after midnight. Part A, use x at intervals of 1 hour from 0 to 6 hours to find the corresponding values of y. Put the values of x and y in a table. That is part A. Part B, use the table to draw a graph of y against x. Then part C, from your graph, find Roman 1, the height of the wave at 3:30 a.m. and Roman 2, the time when the height of the wave is 5.2 meters. So shall start with part A. So part A, first of all, we are given this equation relating x and y. Therefore, we shall draw a table having values of x, value of x, value of 5, and value of cos 30 degrees. Then lastly, value of y here. So they told us that we use values of x ranging from 0 to 6 and with intervals of 1 hour. So we shall start with 0. When x is 0, here it remains 5, but here it becomes cos 0. Now cos 0 is 1, that is why we put here 1. Then this one, y is got by adding these 2, so when I add those 2, I'll come up with 6. Then what about when x is 1? This remains as 5, but this one becomes 1 times 30 is 30, therefore cos 30 degrees will be 0.87 to 2 decimal places. So here we shall be rounding off to 2 decimal places. So when I add this with this, I'll come up with 5.87. Next is x equal to 2. When x is equal to 2, this remains as 5, but this one becomes 2 times 30 to become 60, therefore cos 60 degrees will be 0.5. Then when I add these two, I'll come up with 5.5. Next is 3. So 3, this remains as 5, but this one becomes 3 times 30 to become 90, therefore cos 90 degrees will be 0, and when I add these two, I'll come up with 5. So next is 4. When x is 4, this remains 5, but here it becomes 4 times 30 to come up with 120, therefore cos 120 degrees will become negative 0.5 because it's in the second quadrant. Then when I add these two, I'll come up with 4.5. Then next is 5. When x is 5, this remains 5, but this one becomes 30 times 5 to come up with 250. Then 150. It is 150. 30 times 5 is 150, therefore cos 150 degrees will give you negative 0.87. So negative because it's in the second quadrant. Then when I add these two, I'll come up with 4.13. And lastly is when x is 6, this remains 5, but here we shall say 30 times 5 to come up with 30 times 6 to come up with 180. Therefore cos 180 degrees is equal to negative 1. Therefore when I add these two, I'll come up with 4. So basically that's the table they wanted us to draw in part A. Now let's see how much can be awarded. So here for the generating the values of x, B1 for getting the values of cos 30, getting the values of 30x, and another B1 for getting the values of cos 30. Then B1 for getting the values of y. So now we shall start the plotting. So plotting, we need a graph paper, then we need the horizontal axis and the vertical axis. Next is to put values on the horizontal axis, so let's do that. Then for the vertical axis, we shall also put their values. Then after that we shall start plotting. So plotting, we shall plot these values. For example, so we shall be plotting 0 will be correspond to 6, 1 will correspond to 5.87, 2 will correspond to 5.5, 3 will correspond to 5, 4 will correspond to 4.5, 5 will correspond to 4.13, 6 will correspond to 4. So let's plot all those values. So we shall start with 0. When x is 0, we shall put a value which is 6. Then when x is 1, we shall put a value which is that. When x is 2, the value is there. When x is 3, the value is there. When x is 4, the point is there. When x is 5, the point is there. And when x is 6, the point is there. So after plotting, we need to draw a smooth curve through all these points. So the curve must be smooth and must pass through all those points. So let's first do that. After drawing the curve, you have to label the curve that y is equal to 5 plus cos 30x degrees. So now we shall go to part C Roman 1. So part C Roman 1 at 3:30 a.m. it implies that x is 3.5 hours because counting was start at when x is 0, it implies the time was midnight. Therefore 3:30 it means that 3 hours and 30 minutes have passed, which will become 3.5 hours. So what does that mean? It means that you'll come at 3.5 hours and draw a vertical line to meet this curve at this point. Then at this point you draw a horizontal line to meet this vertical axis. So let's draw that vertical line, horizontal line to meet that. Then after that you have to read off this value. So when I read off that value, it will be 4.75. Therefore I'll come here and say that y is equal to 4.75 meters. So now we shall go to Roman 2. For Roman 2, we shall say that when y is 5.2 meters, it implies that I'll come here and look for 5.2 meters and I draw a horizontal line to meet the curve at this point. Then I draw a vertical line to meet the horizontal axis at that point, and I'll read off that value, and that value is 2.65. Therefore I'll come here and conclude that x is 2.65 hours. Then after that I'll have to convert to 24-hour clock. Therefore required time will be 2:39 a.m. So basically that's what they wanted, and now let's see how much can be awarded. So B1 for drawing the correct scale both axes, and M1 for the correct scale on both axes. Scale has to be uniform. M1 for plotting all points correctly. A1 for the reasonable smooth curve. B1 for attempting to find the height. So for you to draw these two lines, dotted lines, it means you attempted to find the height at 3:30 a.m. Then another B1 for attempting to find the time. So for you to draw these two dotted lines, that's attempting to find the time when the height is 5.2. Then A1 is for you to state the height, and A1 for you to state the time in Roman 2. So now let's look at the report for question 15. Question 15 says that the question required finding trigonometrical ratios, drawing a table of values or tabulation, plotting, drawing a smooth curve, and reading values from the curve. So the curve has to be smooth, not that the curve has to be smooth. So the question was not popular. So you should know how to use a calculator to calculate those trigonometrical ratios, of course. Then the weakness is that candidates failed to get the value of cos 30x. So this one over-deserved students using calculator. So you should know how to use calculators for these trigonometrical ratios, or you use tables, though calculators are faster. Then 2 is failure to get the correct points. So failure to get the correct points was also a weakness of many candidates, because they couldn't get this value, so even the correct points was not easy to get. Failure to get the correct table of values, leading to wrong values plotted and consequently wrong curves. So I think realize that this is very, very crucial. Using a calculator to get trigonometrical functions, learning how to use a calculator to get trigonometrical functions is very, very vital, because it deprived students of these 12 marks, yet these 12 marks could be got. So advice to teachers is that teachers should emphasize the drawing of trigonometrical graphs and drawing table of values correctly. Then 2, use of calculators and tables to find cosines, sines, and tangents of angles. So you have to learn to use a calculator before you go for your Uneb examination. Now we shall go to question 16. Question 16 says a triangle ABC with vertices A, which is -42, B, which is -55, and C, which is -14, is mapped onto triangle A prime, B prime, C prime, by a transformation matrix T, which is 1 0 negative 1 0. The triangle A prime B prime C prime is mapped onto triangle A double prime B double prime C double prime by another transformation matrix M, which is negative 2 0 0 negative 2. Determine part A. Determine the coordinates of the vertices A prime, B prime, and C prime. Then Roman 2, A double prime, B double prime, and C double prime. Then part B, on the same axis, draw the triangles ABC, A prime double B double prime, A prime, B prime, C prime, and A double prime, B double prime, and C double prime. Then part C, describe fully. Know that word, describe fully the transformation represented by Roman 1 capital T and Roman 2 capital M. So let's start with part A. So remember that for you to get A prime, B prime, double C prime, you have to use this transformation matrix, and for you to get A double prime, B double prime, C double prime, you have to use this transformation matrix. So let's use that. So we shall start with A Roman 1. So A Roman 1, we need to multiply the coordinates with the transformation matrix. So this is the transformation matrix, and these are the coordinates. So these are the coordinates of A, coordinates of B, and coordinates of C. So remember, you multiply row by column. So row by column, we shall come up with 0 times negative 4, which is 0, 1 times 2, which is 2, therefore 0 plus 2 gives you 2, which is there. Then with the second row, this with that, therefore it will be this negative 1 by negative 4 to give you positive 4, 0 times 2 to give you 0, therefore 4 plus 0 is 4, which is that. Then that is the coordinates of A. What about for B? For B still will do the same, row by column. So this with this is 0, and this with this is 5. So 0 plus 5 is 5, which is that. Then for the y coordinate, this with that. So this with this is positive 5, and this with this is 0. So positive 5 with plus 0 is positive 5, which is that. Then this with this, so this and that will be 0, and this with this will be 4. So 0 plus 4 is 4, which is that. Then this with this, so this and that is positive 1, and this is 0. So positive 1 plus 0 is positive 1, which is that. So these are the coordinates for A prime, coordinates of B prime, and coordinates of C prime. Therefore, you shall come and state that A prime is 2 4, B prime is 5 5, and C prime is 4 1. Now we shall go to Roman 2. Roman 2 still we shall do multiply. So this is the transformation matrix, and these are the coordinates for A prime, B prime, C prime. So when you multiply the two, shall be able to come up with the coordinates of A double prime, B double prime, and C double prime. So we still do the same. This and that gives you negative 4. Then this with this will give you negative 8. Then first row with this, that was A. Now we shall go to B. So for B, to be first row, and with this to come up with coordinate or x coordinate, which is negative 10. Then also second row with this to come up with the y coordinate, which is negative 10. For C, we shall do the same. That with this will come up with negative 8. Then this with this will come up with negative 2. So now we shall come and conclude that A double prime is negative 4, negative 8, B double prime is negative 10, negative 10, and C double prime is negative 8, negative 2. So before we go to the next slide, let's see how marks can be awarded for this. So M1 for matrix multiplication, A1 for output, M1 for matrix multiplication, A1 for output. So now we shall go to part B. So part B, we have to plot the triangles on the graph first. So for you to draw that, you need a graph paper, which you have now, and next is to draw axes for both horizontal and vertical. So that is the horizontal x-axis and vertical is y-axis. Next is to feed in values for the horizontal axis, so let's do that. Okay, so we have filled in values for the horizontal axis. What about for the vertical? So let's also feed in values for the vertical axis. Okay, so after doing that, we shall now draw the triangles. Remember that triangle ABC has coordinates. These are the coordinates for triangle ABC. So A is -4, 2, B is -5, 5, and C is -4, -1, 4. So let's first plot that triangle ABC. So that is triangle ABC. What about A prime, B prime, C prime? So let's look at the coordinates for A prime, B prime, C prime. So these are the coordinates for A prime. Those are the coordinates. B prime is that, C prime is that. So we have to plot these coordinates and join them using a ruler to form the triangle. Okay, so that is now A prime, B prime, C prime. What about A double prime, B double prime, C double prime? So A double prime is that, B double prime is that, and C double prime is that. So let's also plot them. So that was part B. Now we shall go to part C, Roman 1. So part C, Roman 1, they wanted you to describe the transformation of capital T. You know, the transformation from ABC to A prime, B prime, C prime. So for you to do that, it is either reflection, enlargement, or rotation. Now this one cannot be reflection because these ones are not the same. So this is C and this is A. This is A, this is C, so they cannot be the same, because reflection, it means that they are equidistant. So it is either enlargement or rotation. So for it, if it's enlargement, it implies that when you join the corresponding points, they will meet at a common point. For example, if I join A, C with C prime, and also A with A prime, and also B with B prime, they will meet at a common point. But realize that these ones do not meet at this. Only two meet, but this one does not. That means that it is not enlargement. Therefore, it must be rotation. So for rotation, what do? We are going to draw any two lines. Let's draw a line joining A to A prime and B to B prime. After that, we have to draw the bisectors, perpendicular bisectors of B prime and A prime. So if I start with A prime by perpendicular bisector, what I will do, I will need a compass, so I'll put a compass needle here and draw to an arc. So I'll draw that arc without changing the width of the compass. I'll put my compass needle at point A prime and draw another arc. Then when that is done, I'll have to draw a straight line through this point and this point, which is the point of intersection. So let's first do that. Okay, so that will be the perpendicular bisector of A prime. What about the perpendicular bisector of B prime? So I'll do the same. I'll put a compass at B and draw an arc, which is that. Then after that, I'll put a compass at B prime and also draw another arc without changing the width. Then from there, I'll have to draw a line through these 2 points. There is this and there is also this. So I realize that that line is the y-axis. Now from there, we have to look at the point of intersection. So the point of intersection of those two bisectors, if you look at this, they intersect at this point, which is 0, 0. What does that mean? That means that that is the center of rotation. So to know the angle of rotation, you have to draw a straight line from one point. So from point A to this center of rotation, then from this to this, as you can see with this red line. Then after that, the angle of rotation is the angle between these two lines. So from center of origin to A and from center of origin to A prime, that angle between those two lines is what we call the angle of rotation. So because this is A and this is A prime, this will be the direction of rotation. So the angle is 90 degrees. Therefore, you shall come and say that T represents a positive rotation of 90 degrees about center 0, 0. So this center is this point where the perpendicular bisectors meet, and this angle is this angle here, and the positive is because it was in a clockwise direction. Okay, so that was Roman 1. Now we shall go to Roman 2, where they wanted us to describe fully the transformation of capital M, which is the transformation from A prime, B prime, C prime to A double prime, B double prime, and C double prime. So still we'll do the same. It is either reflection, rotation, or enlargement, but it cannot be reflection if you look at this, because these ones are interchanging. This is A is there and this one is also there. Therefore it is either rotation or enlargement. So for you to find out if it is enlargement, all the three must meet at the point. So if you look at this, if I draw a line from A to this and also a line from this, it meets. And also if I draw another line from here to this point, it will also they'll all meet at this common point, meaning it is an enlargement. What does that mean? It means that now you come and here and say that M represents an enlargement of scale factor -2 and center of enlargement 0, 0, 0, 0, because they meet at this point, and -2 is because this center of enlargement is between the two triangles. If it was positive here, it means that the center of enlargement is outside the two triangles, but if it's in between, it means that it is negative. Now, where does this 2 come from? So that 2 is because of the distance. So from here to here and from here to here, you realize that this distance is twice this distance. But since that one is not easy to measure unless you use a compass, so you can easily use a compass and measure that, you realize that there are 2. But even if you don't have a compass, what you do, look at this. So from here to here, it will be 1, 2, 3, 4 up to the center of enlargement. What about from the center of enlargement to this point C double prime? So it is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I think we realize that these were 4 units and these are 8 units. So 8 divided by 4 will give you 2. That is where this 2 is coming from. So you can do that for any direction. So this was horizontal. You can also use vertical. So for vertical, from here to here it is 1, where this is the center. Then from here to this point is 1, 2. So this is 2, this is 1. So 2 over 1 is also 2. That's where the 2 is coming from. So that can work for all the points. You can either use point A double prime with point A prime, or point B double prime with point B prime. Any of the point will give you that value of 2. So basically that's what they wanted, and now let's see how much can be awarded. So B1 for both axes with correct scale, then B1 for drawing triangle ABC, B1 for drawing this second triangle A prime, B prime, C prime, another B1 for drawing triangle A double prime, B double prime, C double prime. M1 for attempting to find capital T. So for you to draw these perpendicular bisectors and these lines joining, that means we are attempting to find transformation T. Then A1 for you to describe. M1 for attempting to find M. So for you to draw these lines to show that there is an enlargement. That was M1. Then A1 is for you to describe capital M. So now let's look at the report for this question. Sorry, this question required knowledge of matrix transformation, matrix multiplication, extracting coordinates from matrices, plotting on the same axis, identifying the types of transformation, and describing the transformations correctly. So all these applications were available in this question. So you needed to have all this knowledge for you to get 12 out of 12 in this question 16. So the question was very popular and well done. However, there are some candidates failed to identify the correct order of matrix multiplication. Remember, for matrix multiplication to be correct, it means that the number of columns of the first matrix must be equal to the number of rows of the second matrix. Then 2 is failure to write the coordinates. So some students just stopped at matrix multiplication, but you have to again extract them out in coordinate form. That's why you can get that A1, otherwise you'll only get M1 for matrix multiplication. The another one is failure to use the same scale on both axes. So you have to use the same scale for both axes. The another one is that candidates fail to identify and describe the correct transformation. So describing was also a problem, but I believe by now you have already understood how to describe the transformation through this video. So advice to teachers should emphasize the correct order of matrix multiplication. So this is very important. Order of matrix multiplication is very important, because if you interchange, the matrix multiplication cannot come up. Or compatibility of matrices for multiplication. So some matrices cannot be multiplied. For example, a 2 by 2 matrix cannot be multiplied by a 3 by 3 matrix. Writing coordinates by writing coordinates, so students must be reminded to write coordinates and also to use the same scale for correct plotting. So in this question, the scale has to be the same. So now shall go to question 17. So question 17 says, a school has organized a geography study tour of 90 students. 2 types of vehicles are needed: taxis and coaster buses. The maximum capacity of the taxi is 15 passengers, while that of the coaster bus is 30 passengers. The number of taxis will be greater than the number of coasters. Note that word, the number of taxis will be greater than the number of coasters. The number of taxis will be less than 5. Note that word, less than 5. The cost of hiring a taxi is shillings 60,000, while that of a coaster is shillings 100,000. But there is only shillings 600,000 available. Note that word, only shillings 600,000 available. Then part A, if X represents the number of taxis and Y the number of coaster buses, write 6 inequalities for the given information. Then part B, represent the inequalities on graph paper by shading the unwanted regions. Use a scale of 2 centimeters to 2 units on both axes. Then part C, find from your graph the number of taxis and coaster buses which are full to a capacity that must be ordered so that all the students are transported. So this is under linear programming, so let's see how it can be done. So we shall start with part A. So part A, they told us to write the inequalities. So the first one is 15x plus 30y is greater than or equal to 90. So how does that come about? So it comes from here, because the students are 90, but there are 2 types of vehicles. One is taxi and one is coaster. So they told us that x represents taxis and y represents coaster buses. And in this question they say that the maximum capacity of a taxi is 15, so that is 15x. Then the maximum capacity of a coaster bus is 30, so that is 30x. And they told us that the students are 90 and all of them have to go, meaning that the minimum number of students that will be carried will be 90. So because it is minimum, it means that it should be 90 or more. That is why there is that sign of greater than. So that is why there is a sign of greater than. Next we can reduce. So when I reduce, I can divide throughout by 15. So if I divide 15 by 15, I'll come up with x with 1. So 30 by 15 it will be 2, then 90 by 15 it will be 6. So that is one equation. So next is that x is greater than y. So how does that come about? So now that one, it comes from here. They told us the number of taxis will be greater than, or that word greater than the number of coasters. Now remember, coasters is y and taxis is x. What does that mean? It means that x will be greater than y. The next inequality will be x is less than 5. Now where does that come up from? So now that one comes from here. It says that the number of taxis will be less than 5. Now remember, number of taxis is x, therefore it shall write and say that x is less than 5. So that's where that equation was coming from. So those are now 3 equations. Now the fourth equation is this, which says that 60,000 x plus 100,000 y is less than or equal to 600,000. So where does that come up from? So here we are given that the cost of hiring a taxi is 60,000, while that of a coaster is 100,000, and the total, and there's only shilling 600,000 available. So taxi is x, so that is where 60,000 x is coming from. Then coaster is y, that is where the 100,000 y is coming from. Then there is only this amount available, so it means that this is the maximum amount which can be used. Therefore the inequality will be less or equal to this, meaning that it cannot exceed this. The amount used cannot exceed that. So that is why there is that inequality of less or equal to. So those are 1, 2, 3, and 4 equations, so inequalities. So now the 5th and 60th come from something like logic, because the number of taxis cannot be negative, so it is either none or some. Therefore it must be positive. It starts from 0, it's 0, meaning that there is none, or some, meaning it is positive. Therefore for x it will be x greater than or equal to 0, meaning it is 0 or positive. Then also y, it is y is greater than or equal to 0, meaning it is 0 or positive, but it cannot be negative. So those are the 6 inequalities which they wanted in part A. Now for part B, for you to represent the inequalities, you need a certain table. So this table is very vital because it helps you to simplify what you are going to plot. So in this table you need to have a column of region. Now region, we put there these inequalities as we have got them. All these we put them there. So those are the inequalities. The order does not matter, so it is you to choose the order, but it's better to start from the smallest to the biggest. Then after region, the next is borderline. Now borderline, because when you are plotting, we don't plot inequalities, we plot borderlines. Now borderlines means that these very inequalities we have got, what we do, we remove these inequality signs and put their equal signs. So all these ones shall remove these inequality signs and put their equal signs. So let's do that. So that is what we call border line. Now next is to look for the coordinates to plot. Now for this one it is easier. X equal to 0 is the y-axis and y equal to 0 is the x-axis, and this one x equal to 5 is a vertical line at coordinate 5. But this one is not that easy, so we have to get the coordinates. Now x equal to 5 means x equal to y means that the coordinate of x must be the same as the coordinate of y. That's why here if I use 0 as x, it means that even y must be 0. If I use 4 as x, it means that even y must be 4. Then for this one, we ask yourself, if x is 0, I will put x0 here, meaning that I will remain with 2y equal to x equal to 6. Therefore, when I divide both sides by 2, I remain with y equal to 3. That's where this 3 is coming from. Then for this other coordinate, you'll ask yourself, what if this time it is y which is 0? What will happen? It means that the whole of this is 0, meaning x will be equal to 6. That is where this 6 is coming from. So lastly, we shall get these coordinates. So you ask, for example, when x is 0, it implies the whole of this is 0. So remain with 5y equal to 30. Therefore, when I divide by 5 on both sides, I remain with y equal to 6, which is this. So that's where the 6 is coming from. Then when y is 3, I'll come and put here 3 to come up with 3 times 5, which is 15. So when this 15 goes this side, it becomes 30 minus 15, which is 15. Therefore 3x is equal to 15, and therefore when I divide both sides by 3, x will be equal to 5. That's where this 5 is coming from. Now we would have, maybe you're asking why I didn't use 0, 0. So if I use 0, for example, if I use y equal to 0 here, it implies that this will be 3x equal to 30, and when I divide both sides by 3, I remain with x equal to 10. But that value is a bit far from what we want, because here we already have x equal to 5, so x equal to 10 will be far from what we want. But this 5 is near what we want. However, you can also use it, though the scale for when drawing the graph will be a bit hard. So lastly is testing the regions. So testing what to shade and what not to shade. So this one is easier because x greater than or equal to 0, it means that positive values of x are what is needed, and the negative values are unwanted. Here also positive values is what is needed and the negative values are unwanted. This one is also easier because we know that values less than 5 is what is needed, but the ones greater than 5 is not needed. But for this one, you need to do some testing. So for you to test, you choose a point. Let's choose point. Because 0, 0 lies on this line, we have to choose another point. So let's choose 1, 0. So 1, 0, what you do, you choose a point which does not lie on that line. So 1, 0, it means that x is 0, x is 1, y is 0. So come and put it here. Put x here 1, put here y is 0. You'll come up with y is greater than 0. Then you ask yourself, is this true or it is false? So it is true because y is bigger than 0, therefore you write here true. We shall see how this word true is important while shading. Next we shall go to the next line. Next line we shall use 0, 0. When I use 0, 0 here, it implies that 0 will be greater than or equal to 6. Now you ask yourself, is this true or not? In this case it is false because 0 is not greater than 6, therefore we put here false. We shall also see how this word false is important while shading. Then next is for this one, still we shall use 0, 0. So we put this is 0 less or equal to 30. So we shall come here 0 less or equal to 30. Is it true? We shall come and say that it is true. So we shall see how these words true, false are important while shading. So before we go to the next slide, where we have to shade, where you have to draw the inequalities, let's see how much can be awarded for this slide. So B1 for equation 1, B1 for equation 2, B1 for equation 3, B1 for equation 4, and B1 for both these ones which we have got using logic. So now we shall go to part B, where I have to show the inequalities on the graph paper. So what we need first is the graph paper, which we have got. Next is to draw axes, both horizontal and vertical, and they have to be labeled. So this must be done first, always labeling the axes, because some students, they draw a neat graph but they will forget to label, and when you forget to label, that is already havoc. So next is to feed in the values in both axes. So let's start with the horizontal axis. Okay, so those are the values for the horizontal. What about for the vertical? Let's also do the same for the vertical. Okay, so now that we have that, next is to plot. So what we are going to plot, you have to plot these lines. So we need first of all, we need this line x equal to 5. So we'll come at 5 and draw just a vertical line. So x equal to 5 is a vertical line through the coordinate of 5. Next we need this line x plus 2y equal to 6. For you to draw that line, you have to first, let's start with this one, x equal to y. So x equal to y, for you to draw it, you have to first put these coordinates of 0, 0 and 4, 4. So let's put those coordinates of 0, 0 and 4, 4, then we draw that line x equal to y. So this is 0, 0 and also 4, 4 is here. Okay, we have used 5, 5, so this is 5, 5. So next is to draw a line through those 2 points. Now I think we realize that this line is dotted because this inequality was just greater than or less than. So if it is just greater than or less than, it implies that we use dotted lines. If it is greater than or equal to or less than or equal to, it implies that we use bold lines. So dotted for just less than or greater than. So in this case it was that. Okay, so next is to draw this borderline of x plus y 2y equal to 6. So we need these points of 0, 3 and 6, 0. So you come and first put the points. This is 0, 3 and also we need 6, 0. Then we draw a line through these 2 points. So let's do that. And we also have to label it. So lastly we shall draw this 3x plus 5y equal to 30. So we need the points of 0, 6 and 3 and 5, 3. So we shall come here and plot those 2 points. One is that 0, 6, another one is 5, 3. So we have to draw a line through these 2 points, straight line. It has to be straight. So let's do that. And we also have to label. Now next is to shade. So how is the shading done? So for shading, this one was x greater than or equal to 0, meaning that positive values of x are needed, that they imply that negative values are unwanted. Therefore here we shall come and say the positive values of x are these ones, negative values are these ones. So we are going to shade in that direction. So we shall come here and shade that, because this is the unwanted, these are the negative values of x. The another one is for y greater than or equal to 0. So positive values of y are these ones, so the unwanted is this one. That's what we are going to shade. So let's do that. Okay, so next is x less than 5, so meaning that x less than 5 are these values, they are unwanted. Therefore the unwanted is this side, and that's what we are going to shade. So let's do that. Okay, now for these ones which are slanting, we have to use the other column of testing whether it is true or false. Now let's see how it is done. So if you look at this, for this line x greater than y, or x equal to y, the testing gave us true, meaning that where I got this point is the wanted region, and this point was 1 0. So we are going to look at where this point was got. So if you come here, you realize that the point 1 0 is here. Therefore this part is the wanted region and the unwanted is the other side, which is this. So we are going to shade that part like that. Okay, so next we shall go to the next line. So for the next line it was false, meaning that false means that where you got that point is the unwanted region. So if you look at this, it was 0 0 for this line, that x plus 2y equal to 6. So we're going to look at x plus 2y equal to 6 and look for where the point 0 0 is, and that's where we shall shade, because it is false. So x plus 2y equal to 6 is this line, and 0 0 is here, meaning that where you got that point is the unwanted region. Therefore that's what we are going to shade. So you come here and shade that part. So lastly we shall go to the last line. So this line, it is true, meaning that is where I got this point 0 0 is the wanted region and the other side is the unwanted region. So we shall come here and look for that point 0 0. So point 0 0 is here. Therefore this side where I got that point is the wanted region and the unwanted region is the other side. So you come and shade that part. Okay, so we are done with shading, and basically that's what they wanted in part B. So that was part B, where they wanted us to represent the inequalities on a graph paper and shading the unwanted regions. Now we shall go to part C, which says that find from your graph the number of taxis and coaster buses which are full to capacity that must be ordered so that all the students are transported. So we are going to look for those points in the feasible region. So this is what we call the feasible region. So this is what we call the feasible region. So we shall look for integers within this feasible region or along these borderlines, but not beyond. So if you look at it, if you look at this line, the only point which is the point, one of the point is this 4 1, another one is also here, which is 5 1. That is y when y is 0. What about when y is 2? When y is 2, you realize that there is this point, there is this, and there is also this. But this one in the in between, you don't need it, so we shall put this. Okay, there is also this one because it is just at the point at the border. So there is 2 2. So this and this, we don't need it, but we need this one. So always what we do, we take the first and the last. We take the first and the last. Always remember that. So we have 2 2 and 5 2. What about when y is 3? So when y is 3, you realize that there is this point, there is this point, and there is this point. So what shall we do? We are going to take this which is 3 3 and this which is 5 3. So always remember that we take the first and the last. The ones in between, we don't need them. So when you look at this 4, it is outside the required region. So those are the only points of interest. So these are the points 1 2 3 4 5 6. So one of them will give us what we want. So we shall see that in the next slide. So for this slide, let's see how marks can be awarded. So M1 for correct line of x equal x of this with correct shading, then this one is for this line with correct shading, then this one M1 is for the correct line y equal to x, which is that, and this one is for the correct line this with correct shading. So in the next slide we are going to use these points which we have got here, 1 2 3 4 5 6. So let's see how they are used. So for Roman 3 we need to tabulate our results, so this will be the output, that 15x plus 30y. Remember, 15 was the number of people carried by the taxi and 30 was the number of people carried by the coaster. So what we are going to do in this table, we are going to first list down the points we got in our feasible region. So these very points in the feasible region are the ones we shall list. So we shall list 4 1 5 1 2 2 5 3 3 3 5 3. So these are the very points we got in our feasible region. So next is to get the values of 15x. For example, remember these are the columns for, these are the valid x coordinates, so they'll be multiplied by 15. For example, 4 by 15 will give me 60, 5 by 15 will give me 75, 2 by 15 will give me 30, 5 by 15 will give me 75, 3 by 15 will give me 45, and 5 by 15 will give me 75. The next is to look for these values. So 30y means that you multiply 30 by these y coordinates. For example, 1 by 30 will give me 30, 1 by 30 will give me 30, 2 by 30 will give me 60, 2 by 30 will give me 60, 3 by 30 will give me 90, 3 by 30 will give me 90. So next, this one shows that we add the two, so we are going, the output will be got by adding these values. So 60 plus 30 will give me 90, 75 plus 30 will give me 105, 30 plus 60 will give me 90, 75 plus 60 will give me 135, 45 plus 90 will give me 135, 75 plus 90 will give me 165. So it's from these values that we get what we want. So what we need is this 90, because they are 90 students. So we shall come at this 90 corresponds to this coordinate of 4 1. So 4x and 1y. Remember, x was number of taxis and y was number of coaster buses. Therefore, we shall come and say that what is required are 4 taxis and 1 coaster bus. So basically that's what they wanted. Now let's see how much can be awarded. So B1 for listing all these coordinates in the feasible region, M1 for the output, and A1 for the conclusion. So now let's look at the report for this question. So this was a question on linear programming. It required formation of inequalities, plotting, shading the unwanted regions, identifying the right points from the feasible region, and minimization. This question was not popular and poorly done, so hope in this video you have mastered how inequalities are done. So the weakness of candidates in that year, candidates failed to form correct inequalities, so inequalities must be formed correctly. Then 2 is failure to draw and shade the unwanted regions. So like I said, the other table we drew, which had regions, borderlines, coordinates, and testing, is very vital, because without it, it may become difficult for you to shade. Then another one is failure to use the given scale. So you had to use the scale which was given, you don't forge your own. Then next is failure to draw the dotted line. Remember, if the inequality is just greater than or less than, we use dotted lines. If it is greater than or equal to, or it is less than or equal to, then we use bold lines. Then another one is failure to identify the right point. So failure to identify the right points in the feasible region, that is also a problem. Hope you have understood. For you to identify the correct point, you have to draw a column, a table for the output. So one having the coordinates, then the values, the working, and also the output. So in this output is where we can easily get the correct point which is required. Then advice to teachers: teachers should emphasize formation of different inequalities from word problems. So forming inequalities, you cannot run away from it. Then use of the given scale drawing, and shading the unwanted region and getting points in the feasible region. So teachers should emphasize that. So brief summary of the paper. The paper was comprised of 2 sections, section A and section B, and section A had 10 compulsory short answer questions, while section B had 7 extended answer questions, and the candidate answers only 5 questions. So know that word, only 5 questions. The questions were drawn from topics of algebra, equations, linear programming, matrices, 2-dimensional geometry, transformation geometry, and statistics. So always remember that in this paper of paper 1, these are the topics for math, O-level math paper 1. 1 is algebra, 2 is equations, and 3 is linear programming, 4 is matrices, 5 is 2-dimensional geometry, 6 is transformational geometry, and 7 is statistics. So there are 7 topics in paper 1 and also 7 topics in paper 2. So as you are sitting for a certain paper, you must know the number of the kind of topics to expect in that paper. So the paper was easier than that of the previous year, which was 2018, and the time of 2.5 hours allocated for the paper was adequate. So these are the questions which were well done, these are the questions which were poorly done, and these are the questions which most students attempted, and these are the questions which were least attempted. So that brings us to the end of this video. Thank you for watching, and be reminded that the next video will be on UNEB 2019 of Math Paper 2. So if you have not yet subscribed, please click on the subscribe button below this video so that you can receive updates when the next video with the solutions has been uploaded for UNEB Paper 2019. And also, if you know of any student who's not yet on this platform, please share the link of this video with them via social media platforms like Facebook and WhatsApp, so that you can all benefit as a family. Remember, sitting for an examination without going through past papers is academic suicide, and I don't want you to commit academic suicide.